tonight, be aware, thefts of vehicles continue to rise in Fort St. John. Freedom of information. The former mayor of Pouce-Coupe calls out the village. And back to school. A look at the price of school supplies. Good evening and thank you for joining us. And we begin tonight with vehicle thefts in Fort St. John continuing to rise. The trend has been increasing over the past year, and it seems some vehicle owners still not getting the message. Vehicle theft is up slightly so far this month. The largest jump is with pickups over $5,000. That number has doubled since July. Now, year to year, the month of August has seen a significant increase. 5 vehicles stolen last August compared to 14 this year. Police say very often stolen vehicles have left the doors unlocked. Mounties urging the public to remove all valuables and park at night in a well-lit area. The former mayor of Pouce-Coupe is taking issue with the village over a pair of Freedom of Information requests. Lorraine McKetty filed 2 Freedom of Information requests back in June. The first, looking for information about the footprint of the North Winds Drug Rehab Center and why neighbors haven't been consulted. The second, looking into why there hasn't been a town hall meeting. The village asked for $600 to process the 2 requests, saying it would take 8 hours of work to complete. McKetty says she knows how the archives work, and if everything has been digitized like it's supposed to, she says the dollar figure is just way too high. The village then consulted a law firm in Vancouver to help with the request, something the former mayor says at about $200 an hour is not fair to village taxpayers. Officials with the village say if there's no one to process the request, they have to use external help. Village officials adding fee estimates can be increased or reduced if the scopes are expanded or narrowed. The price has been reduced to $160. The former mayor says the requests were made on behalf of a number of residents and they shouldn't have to pay for this information. The first day of school can be stressful. Most schools across the Peace region welcome students back on September the 3rd. But it's not just kids. Parents, too, are feeling the impact on their wallet. Reporter Noah Abel has the details.
Back to school is right around the corner, and some Peace region parents are feeling the pinch with the rising cost of school supplies. A new survey from Rakuten says 70% of parents go over budget when buying school supplies.
I was just talking to a fellow going to Alaska. He said the prices here are crazy, so I definitely notice it.
Statistics Canada says things like pencils and paper are up 3% year over year. It says these items are not affected by Canada's counter tariffs on U.S. goods, but despite an overall increase, some parents have found ways to stay on budget.
Maybe going through their binders and seeing what we don't need to buy this year.
Other shoppers are looking for deals by comparing the price of items at different retailers. A pack of 10 pencils is on sale for $1 at Walmart, while a pack of 12 is $2 at Dollarama. You will pay $2.34 for Crayola colored pencils at Walmart and $1.50 for off-brand colored pencils at Dollarama. A large glue stick is slightly more expensive at Walmart. You can also save on erasers at Dollarama, where it costs $1.25 for a pack of 3 instead of $2 for 2 items. Prices on binders vary and start at around $1.50 at both retailers. You can visit Walmart for known brands and for deals on quantity, or visit Dollarama for cheaper deals on off-brand items. Some schools like Tremblay Elementary in Dawson Creek are offering packages with all basic supplies.
Her school provides the supplies for her, so we just have to pay a fee for that.
At Tremblay Elementary, supplies are provided for $35. The school is still suggesting purchasing a list of extra items. It says backpacks, inside and outside footwear, reusable water bottles, and extra clothing should be purchased. On the bright side, StatsCan says prices for children's clothing are running below the rate of inflation this year. While it feels like the price of everything has gone up, there are some tips to help you save money. One of those is to wait until kids are back in school before buying school supplies to take advantage of sales in September. Noah Abel, CJDC-TV News, Dawson Creek.
And drivers are being reminded to buckle up and keep their eyes on the road as school returns next week. BC Highway Patrol saying distracted driving is now one of the top 3 killers on BC roads. They add seatbelts could have saved many lives in accidents this year. You can expect more officers on the road this month for what they're calling education through enforcement. The BC government has released what rental increases landlords will be allowed to charge for next year. Housing is a major financial burden, and advocates say the province has to do more to make sure rents aren't automatically hiked when tenants move out. But landlords note that in both 2023 and 2024, the rent cap was less than inflation. They say they're glad the province is keeping up, but want to see more help for landlords. Meanwhile, renters are glad for the break, even if it is a small one.
You see people now at 21, 24, 27 that still live with their parents, and it's hard for them.
Any drop is good because, year over year, even just a % difference adds up.
We think that the government needs to take certain actions to help curb costs of housing providers, including things like reducing the property tax burden for rental housing providers.
Rental advocates continue to push for vacancy rent control that would prevent landlords from hiking prices between tenancies with no cap, something that encourages eviction. One group, Together Against Poverty, is advocating for a rule that landlords cannot increase the rent at all without successfully applying to the province to do so. The debate about how to combat the toxic drug crisis in BC has not let up, with many options still on the table. But a question that's not often considered is, why do people turn to illicit drugs in the first place? Well, a world-renowned expert in addiction began his medical career right here in BC, forming powerful insights. Penny Daflas now on what Dr. Gabor Mate calls BC's deaths of despair.
Childhood is a golden time for many of us, but for some it can lay the groundwork for a difficult life in their brains.
The more stress, trauma, instability there's in the environment, the less these circuits develop properly. The more traumatic experiences people have in childhood, by far the greater the risk of addiction.
Best-selling author Dr. Gabor Mate continues to transfix millions of viewers.
The real question in addiction is not why the addiction, but why the pain.
Across various mediums,
the #1 health podcast in the world,
with his profound insights.
Trauma is a wound. It's a psychic wound that leaves a scar, it leaves an imprint.
After practicing family medicine in Vancouver, going on to provide addiction treatment in the downtown east side while working at St. Paul's Hospital, CTV News reached the world-renowned expert on the Gulf Islands.
Both the science and the empathy is missing from the public discourse.
There's been no shortage of rallies and backlash against BC policies like safer supply and supervised consumption sites.
This is about the street disorder and the disorder that surrounds the overdose prevention site.
We should be helping them get off the drugs and not just having a location for them to use the drug.
The most prevalent myth around addiction is that people are choosing to behave the way they are.
He points to multiple studies and research finding poverty and lack of emotional care can impact children and our society.
The more inequality there is in a country, the more addiction there is, the more illness there is, and the more hostility there is.
Mate wants to see education for doctors, police, teachers, and the public about risk factors and how harm reduction measures aren't a solution, but a way to reduce the spread of disease and preventable deaths and connect with those who are suffering.
People are desperate to soothe their pain, so desperate that they even take the risk of taking lethal medications. But what is that if not despair?
When viewed through Mate's compassionate lens, British Columbia records on average 5 deaths of despair every day. Penny Daflas, CTV News, Vancouver.
Well, to the South Okanagan now, where a number of residents have returned home today after they were evacuated due to a wildfire in Peachland area last night. Officials say a total of 58 addresses were evacuated around midnight, but residents were allowed to return home about 3 hours later. Those properties are still on evacuation alert. The fire is 1.4 hectares in size, and it's believed to be human-caused. According to the BC Wildfire Service, the fire is now being held. Flight traffic at the Vancouver International Airport is now back to normal. It follows yet another staffing shortage from NAV Canada, causing hundreds of delays and cancellations last night. NAV Canada says the flow of traffic has returned to normal, but passengers are still being warned about congestion as the backlog clears. The agency says despite its resource constraints, it still continues to recruit, train, and license new controllers at an accelerated pace. Nearly 100 flights were canceled yesterday in Vancouver, and close to 200 more were delayed for nearly 4 hours. A little more than a year after it began expanded operations for the first time, we're getting a look inside the Burnaby terminal of the controversial Trans Mountain pipeline. This is where the TMX ends. It's also where oil from Alberta is shipped to destinations including China, Japan, Korea, and the United States. You'll recall the federal government bought the pipeline back in 2018 and twinned it at a cost that ballooned to $34 billion. Despite that potential, the pipeline currently operates at about 85% capacity. And the man who runs it says the priority should be to maximize that output before building new pipelines.
To build another one of the, another TMX somewhere. And for that reason, optimize the kit that you have, which you can do in steps over time, and then add capacity as it's needed. And then you have time to evaluate the bigger issue, which is, do you need another pipeline somewhere?
A recent report by a financial group in Alberta says the pipeline has delivered an estimated $12.6 billion in new revenue. Well, some bad news about youth unemployment. It's worse than we thought. According to a new report, job numbers for young people are at recessionary levels. It's not good, and it means those between the ages of 15 and 24 are having a really tough time finding work. Adrian Gabriel went to check whether this is just a blip or a problem that's here to stay.
CIBC Capital Markets has shared that unemployment for those aged 15 to 24 has increased by more than 5.5% since 2022. The average uptick in youth unemployment during a recession typically has been around 4%.
It is unusual to see this level of youth unemployment when the economy is not in an outright recession, and it seemed to have started before the economy really slowed. Part of it is tied to AI, artificial intelligence, taking out some routine jobs that entry-level workers did, and part of it is other technologies, fewer jobs for young people working in a store, manning the checkout counter.
Though employment centers say a decline in retail stores has also meant less jobs, and U.S. tariffs have resulted in some small businesses putting a freeze on new hires.
We are seeing about a 20% increase in youth coming in to see us. We haven't seen this kind of desperation in a lot of years. I mean, they have, in some cases, sent in hundreds and hundreds of resumes, not getting any callbacks. So it's a more, as I say, more desperate time that we don't usually see except in times of recession.
Now, earlier this month, StatsCan reported that youth unemployment hit 14.6% across the country. That's the highest since 2010. Now, if you're a young Canadian looking for work, the experts here tell me they're seeing some openings in jobs like cloud computing, cybersecurity, and the trades.
Adrian Gabriel, CTV News.
The Prime Minister wrapped up his trip to Europe with a visit to Canadian soldiers stationed in Latvia. It's our country's largest overseas mission, and Mark Carney offered up a message of gratitude. Abigail Beeman has more from Latvia.
Inside a field ambulance, up close with tanks, Prime Minister Mark Carney talked to dozens of Canadian troops to learn what they do, and he heard what they need.
You see how important, for lack of a better term, drones are in the Ukraine fight. We are watching, studying, understanding how that fight is there, but we need those pieces of equipment here in Latvia.
Drone operator Wayne Fraser says modernization would help too, right down to his tactical vest.
It is a little outdated. There's no modular capability with it, which can be a little bit impeding.
We're also, back home, creating a new defense procurement agency so we can build at pace. So the women and men of the armed forces have cutting-edge military equipment that they need and deserve.
About 200 kilometers from the Russian border, the Prime Minister announced a 3-year extension of Operation Reassurance, saying unfortunately the need for the Canadian-led NATO mission here has only intensified. Carney didn't take questions. His defense minister pushed on whether Canadian troops in Ukraine was a possibility, regardless of a ceasefire.
These conversations are continuing. Obviously, the United States has an important role to play. So we'll see.
Latvia was the last stop on a 4-country European tour for the Prime Minister, who told Canadian troops here in Latvia what he told Ukrainians in Kyiv, that the strategy for Russia needs to be deter and fortify. Abigail Beeman, CTV News, Camp Adige, Latvia.
A young man opened fire through the window of a church in Minneapolis this morning, striking a group of children at Mass during the first week of school.
I heard something like really loud, like I thought it was fireworks in the church, and then I saw the shooting.
The sheer cruelty and cowardice of firing into a church full of children is absolutely incomprehensible.
2 young students, 8 and 10 years old, were both killed, and 9 other children were among the injured. Police believe the gunman then killed himself. He was in his early 20s with no serious criminal history and is believed to have acted alone. All right, please do stay tuned. Noah will be right back after the break with weather.